Hello everyone, David Ruffin, the velvet-voiced, smooth-suited, tragically flawed frontman of The Temptations, was a man whose voice defined an era and whose downfall revealed the brutal realities of fame, addiction, and betrayal in the music industry. For decades, fans have heard only fragments of his story, whispers of ego, drug abuse, and drama that shadowed his legendary tenure with Motown's most successful male group. But in his final years and through the testimonies of those who loved him most, David Ruffin finally revealed the truth, a truth that had been buried beneath decades of rumors, manipulation, and corporate silencing. His confession wasn't just about personal demons, it was about how one of the greatest vocalists of all time was systematically broken by an industry that profited from his genius while discarding his humanity. The story of David Ruffin isn't just a cautionary tale. It's an American tragedy, a heartbreaking saga of brilliance consumed by greed, love turned to resentment, and a man's desperate attempt to reclaim his identity after the machine that made him famous stripped him of everything else. Born Davis Eli Ruffin on January 18, 1941, in the small town of Wynot, Mississippi, a name that now sounds like destiny itself, David grew up in poverty, surrounded by gospel music, heartbreak, and hardship. His father, a Baptist minister known for his fiery sermons and strict discipline, raised his children to sing in church, but home life was far from peaceful. David's mother died when he was young, leaving scars that would shape his emotional life forever. As a teenager, he ran away from home, chasing the dream of becoming a singer, performing with gospel groups across the South. His voice, rich, raspy, and full of raw soul, was unlike anything people had ever heard. By the time he reached Detroit in the late 1950s, he had already begun carving a reputation for himself in local clubs and recording studios. That's where fate and Motown Records found him. In 1964, David Ruffin joined The Temptations, a group already known for their harmonies, sharp choreography, and polished image. But when David stepped up to the mic, everything changed. His voice transformed the group from a smooth doo-wop ensemble into the sound of pure emotion. Hits like My Girl, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, Since I Lost My Baby, and I Wish It Would Rain weren't just songs. They were experiences. When Ruffin sang, you didn't just hear heartbreak, you felt it. His tone had a pleading, almost spiritual quality, a man trying to hold on to love, fame, and sanity all at once. But with fame came temptation, and soon David began to realize that while he was the voice fans adored, he wasn't the one in control. Motown, led by the formidable Berry Gordy, operated like a musical factory, churning out hits, controlling images, and keeping artists in line. The Temptations were the crown jewel of the label, but behind the scenes, David grew frustrated. He felt exploited. The group's name was plastered everywhere, but he, the man whose voice sold millions of records, was getting the same cut as everyone else. When the group's success peaked in the mid-60s, David reportedly demanded that the group's name be changed to David Ruffin and the Temptations, following the model of Diana Ross and the Supremes. It wasn't just ego, it was about recognition. He knew his worth and Motown did too, but they weren't about to let one man disrupt their formula. Berry Gordy refused, and the rift between David and the rest of the group He wasn't just another star who fell from grace. He was a man crushed by a system that refused to let him be free. In his final interviews, he said he forgave the Temptations and even Berry Gordy, but he wanted people to understand how dangerous fame could be. It's a beautiful trap, he said, and once you're in it, they don't want to let you out. And that's the real tragedy of David Ruffin. He gave us timeless music, the kind that outlives trends, scandals, and even the truth. But behind that voice was a man who was silenced for daring to want more than applause. His story reminds us that even legends can be forgotten, that behind every Motown melody there was pain, and that the price of genius in an unforgiving world can sometimes be everything. Yet in the end, David Ruffin's truth, the one they tried to hide, is still singing, loud and clear, through every note of My Girl, through every soul who ever felt broken but still kept going. Because David Ruffin may be gone, but his voice, that haunting, aching, beautiful voice, will never die. As his fame grew, so did his self-destructive tendencies. David's drug use, particularly cocaine, became more visible. His missed rehearsals, erratic behavior, and clashes with other members made life on the road unbearable. The Temptations, once a tightly knit brotherhood, began to fracture under the weight of success and resentment. In 1968, the unthinkable happened. David Ruffin was fired from the Temptations, escorted from the group's limousine mid-tour. The label quickly replaced him with Dennis Edwards, and the band kept moving forward, delivering hits like Cloud 9 and Psychedelic Shack. But David's absence left a void. His firing marked not just a turning point for the group, but the beginning of his own spiral. For years, fans were told that David's downfall was his own doing, that his ego and addiction destroyed him. But what he later revealed, and what those close to him confirmed, paints a more complex picture. He was battling not just drugs, but depression and deep betrayal. He had poured his soul into the Temptations and Motown, only to be discarded without compassion. Motown's iron grip extended to his solo career, controlling his music and limiting his creative freedom. His post-Temptations albums, though filled with gems like My Whole World Ended, The Moment You Left Me, and Walk Away from Love, never received the support or promotion they deserved. Behind closed doors, David told friends that Motown deliberately sabotaged him to prevent competition with the Temptations' new lineup. "They wanted me silenced," he once said, "because they couldn't control me." The truth is, David Ruffin was a rebel in an industry built on obedience. He wasn't content to smile for the cameras and play the part of a happy artist. He questioned royalties, contracts, and image control. Things few dared to challenge Berry Gordy about in those days. And for that, he paid the price. The more he pushed back, the more Motown distanced itself. The music industry at large began labeling him difficult, a stigma that followed him until his death. Yet beneath the turmoil, he remained one of the most gifted vocalists alive, a man whose voice could shatter hearts and lift souls. In the 1970s and 80s, Ruffin's life became a painful mix of comeback attempts and personal chaos. He reunited with Eddie Kendricks and Dennis Edwards for tours, reminding audiences of his unmatched charisma. He even appeared on Motown 25, the iconic 1983 TV special, reuniting briefly with the Temptations in a moment that fans still call one of the greatest performances in music television history. But fame was never again the same for David. The money, the contracts, the promises, none of it filled the emptiness he carried. By the late 80s, his addiction had worsened, and the industry that once crowned him a star now treated him like a liability. But in the final years of his life, David Ruffin began opening up about what really happened. He spoke candidly to friends and journalists about how the music business chewed him up and left him broke. He said he never received fair royalties for the songs he made famous, songs that still play every day around the world. "I gave them everything," he said. "They gave me nothing back." Those who knew him say he wanted to set the record straight before he died, to make sure people understood that beneath the rumors was a man who simply wanted to be loved, respected, and remembered. He admitted his mistakes, the arrogance, the drugs, the women, but he also made it clear that he was never the monster the headlines made him out to be. He was a casualty of an industry that valued hits more than humanity. On June 1st, 1991, David Ruffin died in Philadelphia at just 50 years old, after collapsing from an apparent drug overdose. The circumstances of his death remain clouded in suspicion. Some say he was robbed before being dropped off at the hospital. Others believe his friends failed to get him help in time. What's certain is that his death was as lonely as his life had become. Despite his contributions to American music, he was buried in an unmarked grave until fans raised money years later for a headstone. A sad reflection of how the industry forgot him, but his legacy never died. His voice continues to echo through generations, influencing artists from Rod Stewart to The Weeknd, all of whom cite Ruffin's soulful power as unmatched. The truth David Ruffin finally revealed, and that his loved ones still fight to tell, is that his story was never about destruction but exploitation.